So thank you for being with us on the show. Happy to have you. So tell us, Gareth, just a little bit about yourself, career-wise, family-wise, and then we'll go on.
So career-wise, I trained at PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, so chartered accountant by profession, and then I went to work in the family office space.
Right.
And been working in sort of family office investing for a while, and now have a couple of clients around the world.
Okay. And how many kids do you have?
We have, well, so it's technically 2.5. So we've got 2 little boys at the moment called Theo and Jack.
Right.
Theo's 4.5 and Jack's just turned 2. And then we have one more on the way with the due date, I think it's the 27th of October this year. So
all right.
Getting into a slightly crowded house.
So hopefully, wish you all the best on that front.
Thank you.
I can tell you 3 is a bit, it's not difficult, it's just a little bit more challenging, so to speak. Yeah. So obviously, us dads, we transition from being a boy to a young man in university, starting the career, and then we become dads. So anything that you feel has differed once you became a dad for the first time than before?
Oh, well, I think the biggest is time. It seems to disappear. But yeah, I think that transition from 0 to 1 children is the hardest. I think,
right.
It's a real shock to the system. I think, you're so used to kind of having so much time to yourself and also the kind of connection with your partner and having time to go and do things and speak, and then you have sort of the one child, and I think the sleep deprivation and the but I think you come out of that. I think after 6 months, it's almost, I very much see it, so there's a life before children and life after children, and right. I think it's just different. I wouldn't say one is better or worse. I just think they're completely different. I think you have a great life before you have children, and then you have a great life after you have children. But I think the life after you have children is just the priorities change, because I think you become you become more selfless, and I think they become the center of your world, and they're the most important thing that you can do is the influence you have over them and your ability to, educate them, play with them, nurture them. It's everything.
So it's interesting, for me, when and in my culture with my aunts, is we usually were saying, I was very playful before, I was a dad. But then when I got married, it's like, listen, you need to be a little bit more serious now. Now you're a married man. And then when I got kids, it was more, it's like, you have to be, now you really have to be a little bit more serious. You're a dad now, you're a role model, you're this and that. Did that kind of change with you? You're saying, well, now I'm a dad, I have to be a little bit more this or that. Or was it just more, as you said, time and everything now that you do and every decision that you make, there is that focal point of making sure that he or she is taken care of?
Yeah, I think you definitely, you have to take on that, parental persona, I guess. You have to become, someone that can ultimately, play with your children and have a really good relationship with your children on that level, but you also need to have a degree of, respect to be able to, to discipline and to, kind of coach them into becoming, sort of better and nicer human beings, I guess. Right. But that's something, but then I think the flip side of that is I think you're allowed to almost re-experience so much stuff that you haven't experienced for such a long time. For instance, my eldest is currently into Lego, and he absolutely loves Lego to the point he wakes up on Saturday, Sunday morning, even school mornings, and he'll say, Daddy, can I go and play Lego? Can I go and play Lego downstairs? And, it starts with, yeah, of course you can. But then, the other morning I was down there, and because my wife's pregnant, we obviously left her in bed to relax. And I was down there, and we've got this big box of Lego, and he's saying, Dad, I need this particular piece of Lego. And just the sound of searching through a big box of Lego to find a particular piece to allow him to complete, a construction that he'd done, that sound of rummaging through Lego brought back so many memories of me as a child, like having done that. And, you know, before long you realise that your children have gone off to do something else, and you're still sitting there kind of playing Lego or like, you know, reliving your childhood. And I think those bits, you know, I absolutely adore. Not only on that sort of side, but also the sports side. You know, I'm big into sports. My father was very kind of, you know, sporty individual and played rugby at a very high level. And I think, you know, he always encouraged us with sports. And I think I'm big into my golf, and, you know, I'm so, you know, I took my 2-year-old to the golf range the other day, and he's, you know, he's hitting golf balls. He absolutely loves it. And to see that growth within them, and to see them developing a passion that's, you know, similar to your passions is, you know, is great, because I still play golf with my father, even though he's, you know, almost 70 and his whole, you know, mobility is slightly restricted. You know, you can still compete with him on a level because of the whole handicap system in golf, and to have that with the children, you know, at some point is something I'm looking forward to.
And that's really amazing, because you touched on a point, Gareth, where you said, I think for me, it's an equal experience where when I had my kids, it just brought me back to saying, you know, when I'm with them, I'm an equal in terms of I have to be a kid to relate and play, for them to feel comfortable. And there was no judgments there. There was no, it wasn't anything. It was just playing with them as a kid. And I just loved it. And I still love it till today. Obviously there's, you know, there is some boundaries because you're the dad, and that always has to be respected. But I think, as you said, you're scrabbling through Legos, and you remember when you used to do that as a kid. That brings back, I think, to me, and it seems the same to you, good memories. It just relives the kid in you, because after a career and going to university and this and that, you tend to kind of forget those moments, because everything is, you know, progressing at a fast pace. But when these kids come through, they just remind you of these good old days where you're just sitting there. I love it, really love it.
And yeah, and I think, sort of adding on to that, I think the fact that, you know, they, at a certain age, I mean, my eldest is only 4.5, they're that age where they don't really care about anything about you in terms of how much money you've got, or, you know, what status you've got, or, you know, all these things that I think through society become, you know, they might become quite important to you personally to achieve certain things. I think kids are great levelers, because they just don't care. All they care is that you're there and you're playing with them and you're in that world with them. And I think the great thing about that is I can come off business calls or conference calls or whatever it might be, stressful situations, and you walk downstairs and, you know, within an instant, it all just goes out of your head, because they're trying to find a piece of Lego, or they want to hit a golf ball in the garden and they want you to show them how to do something, or, you know, I don't know, just the way they kind of giggle or play with you, and you just think, and you suddenly just take this massive out breath, and you're just like, oh, this is what's really important in life.
Yeah.
All that other stuff doesn't really matter.
You're totally right, because I feel the same. You'd have a lot of challenges in work, and you probably just got off a call and you're thinking about, you know, how am I going to solve this? Or, you know, there's a lot to do here. And then you see them and they have, you know, in your kid's instance, they maybe can't find a Lego piece. In my kid's instance, it'd probably be, Dad, where's the ball? Or, you know, Yasmin, you know, scribbled on my notepad. And it's the biggest, it's like the world will end because they've had this small problem. And you're sitting there and you're like, you know, this is, you know, in their world, this is the huge thing. And it just brings you back down, right back down. You say, yes, this is what it's all about, and what should be all about.
It was so sweet the other day, because I was downstairs during sort of my lunch break, go downstairs, and at the end of it, I sort of said to I was going back upstairs, and my little one, Jack, said to me, "Daddy, where are you going?" And I said, "I'm going to the office," because the kids know that they're not allowed upstairs when Daddy's working. And they said, "Why are you going to the office?" And I said, "Because I've got to go and earn the money to pay for our holidays." And my little one just went to the drawer. Like we have a messy drawer in the kitchen, which is ends up with everything in it, but there's a little pot in there with loose change, and he went and bought like me a little bit of loose change. I went, Daddy, you can have my money. It was so sweet. I was just like, oh, if only.
Yeah, if only. So Gareth, what are some challenges you feel you encounter as a dad in this day and age now?
I think I think one of the challenges that I've found is specifically with our children is sort of concentration on one particular thing. And I think that what we've noticed, and I think a lot of parents that we speak to notice, is there is this unbelievable reaction to screens that children do almost zombify when they watch something, and that's the thing, is they'll sit on they can be around the house, it can be crazy, high energy, really kind of, frankly can get a little bit annoying if you're trying to do something. And then you have this situation where you could put a TV on or an iPad on and they will literally go into this state of just complete
zombie.
And I think that's kind of, it's really worrying ultimately. I mean, in our house, we're probably quite strict in terms of TV time and when they're allowed to be on. Obviously, none of them are allowed to be on iPads because they're too young, but they're allowed to, well, the younger one's not, but the older one's allowed to watch, half an hour of TV at lunchtime during quiet time, which is after they've eaten. He has quiet time where he plays for like an hour on his own, and then he's allowed to watch TV at the end of that. And then in the evening, we always do, we do a kids' tea at 5, we do bath at 6 in their PJs, and then at 6:30 they're allowed to watch one program before they go to bed, like 10-minute program. But what we were noticing at lunchtime is that if Theo watched a cartoon-based program, he would be a nightmare in the afternoon. He would be really tetchy. He would be horrible. Whereas if he watched a real life thing, like we have this these things in the UK called Maddie, Do You Know, or Katie's Amazing Machines, and they're basically about how things work. So they go to a factory and they work out how a cricket bat is made, or they go to a pasta factory and they work out.
Gareth, this one?
It's called Maddie, Do You Know?
Maddie, Do You Know? Okay, I'll keep noting.
Yeah, and with that, so it's this girl called Maddie, and she goes around and she just household items around the house. She'll like, how do they make toothpaste, or how do they make cricket bats, or how do they make whatever. But it's really educational. And when he came off those programs, he's got 1,000 questions. So he comes out of that state of concentration, but in a really kind of almost sort of thirst for knowledge state. So he'll come and go, Daddy, Katie said that cricket bats are made out of willow. What's willow? What does that mean? And it sparks conversation that kind of leads away from the TV time, whereas opposed to if you put Peppa Pig on at a friend's house, he'll come out and go, I've told him off before, and he'll say, okay, Daddy Pig. You're like, don't call me Daddy Pig. And it's just a different kind of thing. Yeah. So I think one of the challenges is kind of how do you get that level of focus on something that's not a screen.
Right.
I think that's something that we try to do. So, and we have things like, we have a sports chart in our house. So during lockdown, I've bought every kind of sporting equipment off Amazon, from cricket bats to hockey sticks to, basketball hoops to, tennis stuff. And, not wanting to kind of sound like we spoil the children, but in terms of sports, like I just think that what you learn through sport, from teamwork to learning to win, to learning to lose, to learning motor skills, I think it's so important that we reward that with a chart that once he's done, learning with daddy or mummy on different sports, he's then rewarded with some kind of Lego or something, once he gets kind of 30 stars. But it's really good for that, to see them concentrate and get obsessed with something like hitting a golf shot. They will just now go into the garden, probably for the same time they'll watch TV, and try and hit a golf ball on their own. We have these little sponge balls that obviously can't do any damage. And, that's great of kind of overcoming that challenge. And then I guess the other challenge, you know, a real life challenge we have with our eldest is actually, you know, eating, and the fact that our youngest will eat anything. You know, you can put anything in front of him, vegetables, you know, he'll do it. He's such a non-fussy eater, whereas Theo has always been a very fussy eater, which is, for a parent, is I think one of the hardest things, because you just want your kids to eat, to grow, to be healthy. And when you can't get them to eat, it's incredibly, incredibly frustrating, which actually led me to, which is an interesting, in the realms of what SKIPYDOO does. You know, I went to look at other cultures and how they address this. And there's a famous book in the UK called French Children Don't Throw Food.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've...
There's a book. Yeah, I heard about
very famous book, and it's actually about an American journalist who was 35 when she went to go and live in Paris, and she was astounded how in French restaurants, you know, kids that were my age would just sit there quietly. They'd eat the food, the same food the parents are eating, pretty much. They wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't disrupt the lunch, and I think that's fascinating of how, you know, kind of other cultures deal with the same challenges that are faced, you know, universally, and how you can learn from other cultures.
Yeah, I think
to achieve that.
I think you touched, Gareth, on an important thing, and I think screen time has increased. If you look at all the statistics, and you know, they're there for everyone to see. And I think it's not only because content has become so easy to create, right? All you need is a phone to create content. It really now doesn't really have to be good content. It could be any content, and kids kind of just levitate. I mean, you have shows now about kids playing or unboxing toys, and children are fascinated by it. I don't know why, but you know, they are. So you have that, and then you have, you know, it's just so many platforms. You want YouTube, you want this, you want that. Different countries have different platforms, and you know, kids can access that. And I think, and I'm not blaming anyone or any parent, but it's just sometimes an easy way out to just say, and as you said, like, kids would just sit there and watch. And I think that's, and I'm guilty of that as well. And I think a lot of parents probably are too. And I think that's why it was important for me to create SKIPYDOO, because as you said, is just to use whatever we have in the house and kind of just pull them away from that screen and say, listen, let's, you know, yes, we have our sports, and, you know, during the lockdown, we'll try as much as we can to do that. But how about we create mini versions of games within sports, or like concepts of just, you know, first is the creation of the game, putting some small rules together, and then playing them to get us all involved as a family, play more, and become resourceful, because you never know when another lockdown will come, or you never know in life where you just have to kind of pull on simple resources, make the best out of it, and make the most fun out of it. I think that was the drive for us. And I know that we speak regularly, and you've played, I think, some of the games, and one game that I think we'll discuss in the future is a golfing game, because I think a lot of dads and a lot of kids are getting into that sport. My kids not so much are in it, but I think it's a very cool game, very easy game to use, you know, something within the household to create a game of golf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's good about the creation of games is that, you know, often when I'm teaching the children a particular sport, you're obviously confined by the rules of that sport. And, you know, sometimes young kids can get quite frustrated if you're teaching too much, if you're sort of saying, well, this is how you do it, this is the correct way to do something. You know, they like to freestyle. And I think actually, you know, to engage them initially, to allow them to create their own games or have their own ideas, you know, that's certainly when my eldest gets most passionate about doing something, is when he has some input into what that game might look like, you know, and whether that's a kind of, you know, hide and seek game, or turning the sofa into a boat or a pirate ship or something. That's kind of, I think, where he really kind of gets quite engaged and enthusiastic. And yeah, so I do really like the idea of kind of using those household items, and it's definitely worked for us in the past.
And I think the last thing that I want to talk about, and before we let you go, Gareth, is we talked about the importance of understanding and being exposed to other cultures at a younger age. Before you hit university, or before you hit high school, or before you hit the workplace, in order to avoid what's happening today. And I think you and me had multiple discussions over this. It's almost like we're open to something like a digital pen pal. Like we discussed before, is like if my Siraj talked to your oldest, is not Theo, is he? No.
Yeah.
Theo. So if Siraj talked to Theo, say on like different topics, right? Where do you live? Live in London? How's the weather? What do you do every day? And each kid brings them into their world, so they're a little bit more understanding. And I love the example we talked about Pancake Day, and how Siraj would be over the moon and understanding what this means in the UK, and how do you guys celebrate this? From your perspective, do you think this is something that could be useful for kids, of kind of just understanding other cultures, but in their own language and in a safe environment, obviously?
Well, there's two things actually. I think 100% yes, and I think it's quite interesting because since we've had our conversations, I've noticed my wife is very good with the interior design. She does kind of the bed heads and his bed has been done into kind of a treasure map, but it's a treasure map of the world. And
oh, nice.
If you look across the world, you have kind of the pyramids in Egypt, and you have like a toucan in Peru, and you have different like different symbols. And after our conversations, I thought, well, it's brilliant, because I tend to tell them a story every night kind of from my head about different characters. And I said, look, what we're going to do is our character, which is like a bear, he's going to go around different parts of the world. So you turn around, look at your map, and just point to something, and he'll point to kind of the pyramids in Egypt, and we'll then tell a story about getting there. And as much as I know, and what's two things that are really interesting is, one, it really tests your own knowledge, and you realize that in certain areas of the world, you just don't know enough. And I would like to learn more, personally, but also how fascinated the children are about what it's like in a different country. And you kind of obviously talk about like the weather and the pyramids and kind of why they're there, and all this kind of really hopefully interesting stuff. I mean, he is enamored by it. And I think what would be great is like an extension of that would be to kind of create video content or something where we could show our trip to the golf range, for instance, or our, like you said, us making pancake batter and making pancakes, and what we would have in those pancakes, and sharing that content cross-culturally, where someone that doesn't have those things in their life can look and have a relationship with Theo via kind of these little clips and little videos, and say, oh, that's really interesting what they do. Can we do that at home, Mummy and Dad? And likewise, we reciprocate that, where we might have, a family in Japan or something that might make sushi at home, and that's something that we would never do. But then we would get that content from them and say, oh, this is great. You've got this friend that's similar age. She's now, or he has done a little video on what they do at home or what they do to relax. And we can try and do those things as well. And for those children to have access to that through the powers of technology, and use those sort of screen time, if you like, in a way that triggers activities off the screen, I think would just be, it's hugely compelling for them, not only to do that, but then to build up a network at such a young age of children, across the world. We have this thing, there's a very famous, he's become very famous in the UK, an artist called Charlie Mackesy. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he did a book that's been best-selling, and it's called The Fox, the Fox, the Hare, the Horse, and the Boy. And it's all lovely illustrated pictures of kind of quotes and lessons on life. And one of them is, it says, it's like a picture of a boy sitting on a log, and the horse says to him, what do you want to be when you grow up? and the answer is kind. And my wife loves this idea that, you know, she says, you know, you can't kind of wish your kids to be super clever or amazing at sport, but you can wish for them to be kind, because it's something that you can't fail at, being kind. And I think it's really interesting, because when I thought about that more, you know, that kind of can be extrapolated out to, you know, tolerant, inclusive, you know, empathetic. And I think those traits are so important when you look at kind of what's happening in the world at the moment. Yeah,
it is, you know, these, you know, and when I went to my MBA program, empathy and obviously and emotional intelligence and cultural intelligence, all of this was taught. And I think, you know, these things right now, is even before they used to be said as the soft skills. Well, I think these are more, you know, essential skills. And obviously, yes, you have to have hard skills, you know, like your professional skills, but these skills are what are going to bring the world together. And what, you know, now you're seeing even in corporations and teams and startups, this is really what galvanizes people to kind of excel. And I think, you know, for Siraj, and since we've been talking, I've actually talked to a few dads across the world. So I have you in the UK, I have a friend in Italy, I have a couple of friends here in the US, and obviously Siraj has some friends back home in Saudi Arabia. And on these networks for kids, we could, you know, hopefully create like a safe environment where they can all talk to each other. But it's great that they have, you know, there are similarities. Obviously, play is the core at all of them play. They play different things, but play is there. But beyond that, each of them comes from a different kind of culture and background. And when kids talk, that's open, and they're just willing to learn because it's coming from another child or another kid. So it's their own language, and they're so excited. Like, oh, you know, I spoke to Theo today, Dad, and they have this in the UK. Did you know this? No, I really didn't know this, but I love that, you know, you're getting to know it. And then he'll share it with his friends, right? And Theo would say to his friends, by the way, I have a friend in Saudi. You know, this is what, you know, this is what they, you know, tend to do in this time of year, and so forth. And I think it is exciting to kind of try to build something like this.
And I think super powerful, you know, if you think about how, you know, how kind of, you know, racism starts, or, you know, that divide starts, you know, it often can be witnessed in the playground, right? It's people are different, therefore they're unfamiliar, therefore they're scary, therefore they need that it creates this division. And I think if you've got a situation where, you know, 4, 5, 6-year-olds have got friends cross-culturally and are learning about it, they're not scared of, you know, seeing a turban, or, you know, or they're not scared of seeing someone with a sort of an oriental look or something like that. You know, there's not that kind of fear. It's like, oh, I've already got a friend that looks like that, or I've already got a friend that does this, or I've already got, you know, this is normal. Like, why are you making it a big issue? And that's, I think, how you counter it at a very, very young age. And it becomes, you know, it's like an opportunity to, I think what you're doing is an opportunity to create something incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Well, Gareth, we really appreciate you coming online today.
Absolute pleasure.
I can see it's sunny in the UK, which is not usual, but, you know, yeah, it's rare. But I hope you enjoy the weather. Great talking to you, and you know, hopefully this will be, you know, posted for everyone to see. If you have a father or dad that you think would like to come on the show, let us know. And until, you know, next time, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Great to speak.